Fencing, commonly referred to as physical chess, originated from the aristocratic art of sword fighting. Now one of the oldest Olympic sports, it has come a long way from its dueling roots. Today I sit down with former Olympian Dan Kellner, who found success in strategy over strength. He continues this tradition today by passing on the torch to the next generation of Olympic fencers. The entrepreneurial spirit is the cornerstone to the American dream, a beacon to all willing to weave their story into the fabric of our history. I'm Elliot Dweck, and this is From the Founder. Dan, how you doing today?
I'm doing really well. How are you?
Good. I read that when you were 13 years old, you were inspired by a video game.
Yeah, I had a game called Summer Games '89 for my Commodore 64 computer, and it had all the sports of the Olympics on it, including fencing.
Up until this point, you don't know anything about fencing?
I know nothing about fencing.
Okay.
Absolutely nothing. I don't think I'd even heard of it. But I'm trying to play this video game, and I'm awful at it, but it just seems so interesting that I can't get it out of my mind. I go to my mom and ask her about it, and she says, I don't know anything about fencing, but they've got it at your high school, go see the coach.
Let's break it down. So you have this video game.
Yeah.
You like fencing, you're not really good at it on the video game, but it seems cool to you.
Yeah.
So you tell your mom, and your mom says it's actually offered at your high school.
Yeah.
So you go talk to the coach.
Yep.
Do you remember speaking to the coach?
Oh yeah. I remember being really, really nervous having to go to the high school side and like go into the English department and knock and say, is Mr. Lee here? Hi, my name is Dan. I want to learn about fencing. What can I do? And he told me I could show up to the high school preseason practices. And then once I tried it, I knew this is what I wanted to do for as long as I could.
What was it about it?
I don't know. It was just, I wanted to be good at sports, and I was bad at team sports. I was a mediocre runner. I couldn't do push-ups. I wasn't conventionally athletic at all. But when I got on guard, it just almost felt more right than just walking around normally.
And you weren't really good at it when you started?
Not particularly, no. I think I was good at fencing, not because I was such a great athlete, but because I really understood the mental game and the tactical aspects, and I was able to improve my athletic ability enough to be able to compete with some of the people who were better athletically, but maybe not as good tactically and not as good technically.
So you have this specific set of circumstances that's fortuitous for you in your career.
New Jersey has the most number of high school fencers in the country. So I was lucky that I was born in the right state. I was lucky that my high school had fencing. I was lucky that my parents had the means to support my fencing career. And I was lucky that the Soviet Union fell at just the right time for this man to come into the country and be able to give me lessons. His name was Simon Gershon, and he was my coach for my entire career.
Wow. Throughout high school, you're fencing. When did you first realize that you were good?
About 2 years after I started fencing, I think I got second at my second national fencing competition in the under 17 category. And I think that showed me that I could compete with some of the best fencers in my age group in the country at the time. By the time I was 15, 16 years old, and I knew I wanted to go to the Olympics. I remember watching the Olympics with my mom. She was a big Olympics fan. I didn't know what training for the Olympics meant. I didn't know how hard it was. I just knew that I wanted to do it. And it was during college that I made my first junior world championship team, and then the next year I was on the senior world championship team for the United States.
When does the dream of being an Olympian start to feel more real?
It definitely started to feel more real around 1997, because that was the year I made my first world championship team. That means I was top 4 in the United States. Unfortunately, I didn't qualify for the 2000 Olympics. That was actually really crushing. And after that, I took a year off from fencing to kind of like gather myself and like look at my life and see, is this worth doing again? And I realized I missed fencing so much that after a year off, I came back, I rededicated myself to my training and tried to fix the mistakes that I had made the first time around. And that allowed me to qualify for the 2004 Olympic Games. We were the number 7 ranked team in the world, and we had to fence the number 2 team in the world, Germany, at the Olympics, and we were able to upset them.
13 can now put the Americans into the next round. Kellner, and he's done it. The United States into the semifinals here in Athens, Greece.
It was the first time the U.S. men's foil team had made the top 4 in the Olympics in 56 years. So it really was a great accomplishment at the time. Unfortunately, we didn't medal, but it just showed us that we could compete at the highest level of this sport, even though we weren't professionalized the same way a lot of other countries were.
Right.
And after the Olympics, it vaulted me to my best world ranking. I broke into the FIE top 16 in the world, and at the time I was only the 2nd men's US foil fencer ever to be top 16 in the world. So that was an accomplishment.
And you were top 10 in the world.
I think my highest ranking was 10th in the world.
Yeah, and 1 in the US.
At the time, yes. Yeah.
I can't even imagine what it's like to be number 1 in the entire country at anything.
Oh.
You're the best person in America at something.
I never really thought of it like that, because I always thought, well, I'm only 10th in the world. I gotta get better. At that point, I was trying to improve my world ranking as much as possible. I got to compete in 1 Olympic Games, and I was planning on competing in at least 1 more, and then unfortunately I got hurt, and then that kind of ended my competitive career in the middle of training for the 2008 Olympics. But I wasn't bitter about it, because I was able to accomplish so much. And then when I was done recovering from my injuries, I realized I really missed fencing, and I wanted to stay involved somehow. And by that time, my wife and I had moved to Brooklyn and found a small fencing club basically 2 blocks from where I was living at the time. Just started coaching there part-time for fun, and I really didn't think I would love coaching as much as I did. At that time, it was 2010, it was the Great Recession. It turns out, as you know, you were in real estate, recession's a great time to rent some space and start a business, because the rents are cheap.
Yeah.
And so I came here to Dumbo and started the Brooklyn Bridge Fencing Club, and 10 years later, here we are.
How'd you go from there to saying, you know what, I am going to open up my own studio, I'm gonna turn this into a business?
I come from a family of entrepreneurs and self-employed people, so I never thought it was that big a deal to start your own business. It's like, this is what I'm gonna do. My life story has sort of shown that if I work hard enough, I can accomplish anything I want. And I just decided I wanted to do this, so I did it.
I've never really fenced before, but when's the next time I'm gonna be in a room with an Olympian fencer? So I got warmed up, and I learned some of the basics. How to advance, retreat, attack. And then it was time to suit up to see how I could hold up against the former number 1. At first, I was feeling pretty confident. Thought maybe I had Olympic potential. You know, I could be the next Kellner. You know, Kellner, Dweck. But then I realized that Dan was just taking it easy on me. But jokes aside, it was a great workout, and it was amazing to learn from the master himself. From that kid in 7th grade to 2004 in Athens defeating Germany, that must have felt like you can accomplish anything.
Yeah, pretty much. I knew that the fencing that I was taught could succeed at the highest level because I did it myself. So all I had to do was find the students and make them believe the way my coach made me believe. It's great to be able to now to teach these tactics and techniques to athletes who are much better natural athletes than I ever was, and to see them take it to a level that I never achieved. As a coach, it's really not my job to teach fencing. It's really to communicate the love and joy I have for this sport, and to show people how this sport can transform their lives just in the same way that it transformed mine.
When you were starting out, year 1, what would you say the biggest challenges were?
The biggest challenges were getting more people in the door.
And how did you overcome that?
Luckily, being an Olympian says you are good at this. But I still had to convince people that I could coach. There's a difference between being able to perform it yourself and teach it to somebody else. And I had to say, after the first year, word of mouth advertising was my biggest seller.
Was it just you training in the beginning?
Yeah, in the beginning, it was just me, myself, and 13 students from the previous club. I gave all the lessons, I taught all the classes myself. My wife, who was pregnant with our first child at the time, helped me work the door. My mother helped me work the front desk for a little while. And then as soon as I couldn't handle the workload by myself, I was able to hire my first coach. And that's when I felt like it really turned into a business, because I could make money from somebody else's time. On the strips that you trained on, we started with 4 strips, 1 coach, myself, and 13 kids. And then before COVID hit, we have 11 strips. We had 165 kids, and I had 4 other coaches.
And so you figured out how to scale this business. Yeah. And you told me earlier that you make full-time money working part-time.
Yeah.
That's got to feel cool.
Yeah, it's great because I have 2 kids and my wife is at home. So in the morning, get to wake up, eat breakfast as a family. The kids do school. We get to usually eat lunch as a family, and then I go off to work at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and get back at like 7:30 at night.
Where do you see this fencing club in the future?
Great question. After the summer, to have an Olympic gold medal associated with this club, I think that's every Olympic coach's dream. So I'd really like to see that.
And you have people here that you've trained who are in the Olympics and have competed.
Yeah, I'm very lucky. This club has contributed to a bronze medal at the 2016 Olympics, and then 2019 at the World Championships, my British athlete Marcus Mepstead won the silver medal.
Mepstead with a beauty. Dan Kellner applauding him.
We are, knock on wood, 1 tournament away from qualifying for the 2020 Olympics.
Wow.
Lately, there's been really like a renaissance in American fencing, and I'm just happy to be part of it over the last 30 years.
A big part of it.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see.
I read somewhere that you have worn the same shirt in every single round.
So I had this adult extra large Joker t-shirt that was way too big for me when I was a 13-year-old kid. And during my fencing career, I wore it in every first round of every tournament I ever fenced in for 10 years.
And this was something where, was it like a superstitious
thing?
Yeah,
it was just one of those athletic superstitions. I needed my Joker t-shirt.
You know, a lot of athletes, their next step or natural progression of their career is to then become a coach, and a lot of them are not the best coaches, but even though they were great athletes, and you happen to be great at both.
Thank you.
I think that a big part of it was you not being so athletic or so great at the sport right away. So when you're coaching,
yeah, I had to figure out a lot of stuff.
It's not like you were so gifted the first time you picked up a weapon, they were like, oh my God, this is an Olympian.
And I wasn't a natural athlete in anything I tried.
And I think that's part of what makes you a great coach.
I think you're right.
Can you imagine your life if you never played that video game, that 1989 Summer Games?
I had no idea, couldn't tell you. I know that this is my calling and this is what I was meant to do. And I'm really so happy that I found it.